Hey, our summer series is taken from the book of Proverbs, and it's called Life Hacks. A life hack is kind of a shortcut, an idea that's going to help make life go a little bit better. And we've compared that each of the week to the life hacks that are found in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs is like this life hack collection right there in your hip pocket. And so we've offered a few life hacks every week of our series, and we're going to do that again today. And a couple of life hacks. When it comes to winter time and your car, that's always a difficult time when it comes to winter in your car. So a couple of ideas that we could pass along to you. One is that you should park your car facing east, if at all possible, because when the sun rises, what happens to that heavy frost on your windshield? It's going to be one of the first things to melt. So if you can, park your car facing east. Another thing you can do, we found another use for these socks. A couple weeks ago, we talked about ways to help your sore throat with a sock. And anybody here tried our remedy for sore throats using a sock and some melted butter? What are we doing these for if you're not taking our good advice? It was like pour melted butter all over a sock and wrap it around your neck. And I don't intend to ever try it either, but we're here to help. But another idea, and I've tried some variation of this, is if wintertime the things freeze on your windshield, I put plastic over the windshield if it's going to be out with freezing rain. But another suggestion is put a sock over your windshield wiper. And socks come in pairs, wipers come in pairs. It's a match made in heaven, if you ask me. But then you've got those side mirrors, and you got to back up. You don't want to back into the ditch like I did the other day. So what you want to do, you take a freezer bag, put that over your side mirror before the freezing rain comes, and now you're set up. In the morning, you just take that freezer bag off of there, and you're all set. These are all life hacks when it comes to your car. Now, I remember my life hacks is a new term, but the idea goes back a long ways. We'd call them folk remedies, or sometimes we didn't have a name for it, but it was like, you should do that, and it just gets passed along. So there I was at my high school graduation party, and it was a Saturday night party at my house, and the street was real crowded, a lot of cars, and so one of the students, one of my friends, backed into another car, crowded street. Right away, so she comes over, hey, I just backed into somebody's car. Right away, everybody's like, get a plunger, get a plunger. I'm like, get a plunger? What are you talking about? Oh, they work great. You can get dents out. We'll check with Darren later what he thinks about that. But I wanted to pass that life hack on. Some of these plastic bumpers get dented in. I don't know how well it's going to work, but a life hack. And I was in a life situation, and we brought the plunger out of the house, and they're out at the street, and I'm like, knock yourself out. I got some other people I'm going to go see. But there was that. Now, how many have had the problem when you come out of someplace, you forget where you parked your car? Have you had that problem before? Well, we're here to help. Nobody wants to admit that. But if you take your cell phone, take a picture, not of the car next to you, because they might leave, but like, you know, if there's a column C2, or I'm next to this light fixture, or next to the plant or something, take a picture, keep that filed away, and then when you come out a few hours later, you're all burdened down with shopping bags from the shopping mall, you know right where to go. We're here to help. That's what it is, life hacks. Now this one, I'm very curious. If you've tried this before, or if you are going to, please let me know, because I want to know it works before I do it. But you've been again, you can't find your car. So what do you do with the remote, right? You're hitting the button, hit the lock button, trying to, I think that's it. Over there, 3 aisles over. But you don't know till you get in close enough range. So a life hack, it's kind of discovered, if you put your key fob with the transmitter near your chin, it extends the range. In fact, we have discovered it'll give you 2 times the distance. So when you leave today, I want to see a bunch of you going out if you've locked your car up by your chin, and then you let me know if it works. But it works 2 times as far. So I want you to do it regular and then come back. and then back up and see how that's going to work for you. We're here to help, okay? You've had another problem that we're here to solve for you. You buy that pizza maybe at the local convenience store, and by the time you get that pizza home, it's cold. We live out in the country, had a ways to drive. But some of you have those fancy cars with the seat warmers in them. So turn that seat warmer on, then set your precious pizza down. It's going to keep the cheese soft and then and stringy and such when you get home. Tell me that's not a life hack. You're going to try that this weekend, next weekend. And one more. I know you cannot take any more. You cannot handle any more. But you get in the car. It smells stale. It smells damp. Everybody's got these wax things now, right? What are they called? I tried to act like I don't know, Sensei, but I do. And so get yourself a glass jar that's going to fit right in the cup holder. This might be a little big, but it was for illustration purposes. And so take some of that wax, put that in there, and then what's it going to do like tomorrow afternoon when it's 90 degrees? What's the temperature inside your car? It's wax melting temperature. What's your car going to smell like? Zen garden is what ours is going to smell like. So you can't beat that stuff. And one more. This is the life hack to beat all life hacks. Check this out. We actually tried this out and see what you think.
What's up, guys? It's Jake and Gabby, the intern, here with another life hack for you today. Today we're outside. We're on location here, and a lot of us have these foggy headlights. We live in a small area, rural community where dirt roads and dust, and we get these kind of foggy headlights. And we have a life hack for you today with everything that you have in your house. So what do we got, Gabby?
So basically, all you need is a tube of toothpaste, a wet towel, and a dry towel. The first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna take your toothpaste.
Ooh, the blue kind.
And you're gonna rub it on your headlight, just like this. It's so easy that anyone can do it.
A few moments later.
So, you're gonna rub it in well, and you might have to apply a couple different coats, and you're gonna leave it on for about 30 seconds. Now, after you apply it, you're gonna just take this wet rag, and you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna wipe it up. What are you doing?
What do you mean, what am I doing? Well, I figured we're life hacking, so I haven't brushed my teeth this week, so...
That's not a life hack.
Two
That's
birds
just
with a stone,
That's just not having good hygiene.
You don't know that. You're not a dentist. I'm brushing my teeth. This is super clean. I mean, it's fine.
It just touched a car headlight.
Well, that's getting clean. It's soap. My teeth are getting clean. It's going to be fine, so...
Can we deal with this?
How's it looking there? Hey, clean this off so I can.
Alright, so it's been about 30 seconds and we've applied a few coats, so we're gonna go ahead and start wiping this off. And as you can see, it has gotten rid of some of the fog here. Look at that.
You might need to do a couple coats, but this is a really cool life hack to clean up those headlights.
And it looks really good too. It really did clean it.
Yeah, I mean, I could use a little more work, but it's pretty clean.
Life hacks, what can we say? And it looked to me like Jake took one for the team there, didn't he? So, big thanks. What the book of Proverbs does is it applies God's wisdom to life. And today we're going to apply God's wisdom specifically in the area of marriage. When it comes to the book of Proverbs, it's like having life hacks right there in your hip pocket. When you open up the book of Proverbs and you begin to read, and it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he'll make your paths straight. So today I want to pull some key ideas from the book of Proverbs when it comes to marriage. And the first thing it does is it talks to us about placing high value on the marriage relationship. Place high value on the marriage relationship. Marriage is something to be guarded. It's something to be cultivated. It's something to be honored. A couple of verses, one in chapter 18 and verse 22. It says there that he who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord. Finds a wife, finds a good thing. And then the next chapter, chapter 19 and verse 14, honor, houses and riches are an inheritance from the fathers, but a prudent wife is from the Lord. Now let me offer a couple of areas where we would value marriage over, because these three areas that we're going to draw out marriage tends to take second place a lot of times in our culture. One of those, value marriage over living together. Marriage is God's design. It's God's plan. You can't expect God's blessing on a relationship when the relationship is outside of His plan. Now, in our culture, it's become more and more common in our culture for people to do that. But whenever you have a living together situation, the woman has less security because the man won't commit to her. And the man has less maturity because he lacks commitment within his own spirit. And so you end up with a relationship that never has full commitment, never has full security, never has full maturity when they're living together. Now, some say, well, marriage, it's just a piece of paper. We're not going to get married for just a piece of paper. So I love the quote that I read just this week that somebody I had seen posted. They said, for those who say marriage is just a piece of paper, so is money, and we spend lots of hours working for it and making it work. And if a couple stops short of marriage, then they're cutting themselves off from full maturity, full security. Another area to value marriage higher than is hobbies and side interests. Don't get married if you still want to play softball every night. Don't get married if you still want to be gone every weekend doing your recreation and fun. You're choosing to leave all others aside and choosing this one. That's part of those vows. Now, there's a biblical solution when marriage is devalued. It's called confession and repentance. We confess to God. And then we want to help people get married and get right with God. Our intent isn't to criticize or condemn those that are living together. We want them to find confession before God and then make restoration and make things right. Hey, there's a third area that we would say value marriage over, and that is your kids. Now, this one's a lot harder for people to swallow because their kids mean so much to them. In a second marriage, it makes it even more complicated as to where loyalties lie. But at some point in your family life, the children are gone. The children will be gone, and what you have left, you want to have something left. A child-centered family ends up with two roommates that are staring at each other trying to figure out, who have I been married to all these years? Because they've built their life around the kids. And so we say, rather than have a child-centered family, have a marriage-centered family, so that even the kids understand the highest value around here is mom and dad and what they have going on. There was, for most of my kids' lives, I would say, don't talk to your mother that way. And as I pondered the implications of a marriage-centered family, it dawned on me, if I want to stick up for my marriage, I need to change the wording. Don't talk to my wife that way. What's the difference? If they're talking to their mother, it's them against her. If they're talking to my wife, it's them against us. And now they have bigger problems, and it calls for greater respect because it's my wife they're talking about. Far too many people are together for the kids. The greatest thing you can do for your kids is to honor your spouse, is to value your marriage. Sports Illustrated, the most recent issue, has an article about parents that are obsessing over their kids in sports. Now, when I say that, you're thinking about the Little League parent, the 15-year-old parent that's calling the high school coach. And if you're here and you're a high school coach, you've seen a marked increase in the level of parental involvement, we'll call it. But the Sports Illustrated article dealt with college and professional teams. It mentioned the Phoenix Suns of the NBA. They have parents that show up for practices, and they have to assign staff members who are liaisons to the parents of their athletes because the parents are so oppressive. It mentioned a National Hockey League player whose parents hired a private coach for him during the season because his professional coaches weren't doing a good enough job. They used to call it helicopter parenting, and that's what I've called it. But in the article, this one expert on the subject said it's no longer helicopter parenting. We're calling it snowplow parenting because it's parents that are removing every obstacle from their kids' life, all the way to the professional level. Now, let's be honest. When parents are obsessing over their kids at that level, what do those marriages typically look like? There's not usually much going on there. In fact, many of those articles about obsessive parents talk about the parents don't live together. The best thing you can do for your kids is love their spouse, love their parent. That creates a security for them that's irreplaceable. Now, if marriage is not valued, there's two things that Proverbs speaks about very specifically. The first one is withdrawal. If it's not valued, then the person that is valuing something else withdraws from the marriage and they begin to invest in something different. It's Proverbs 18 and verse 1, fascinating verse. A man who isolates himself seeks his own desires, and he rages against all wise judgment. How fascinating. When you isolate yourself, you're fighting against all wisdom. Another one is nagging that happens because we're not getting what we want out of the other person, so we begin to nag them. In Proverbs, I put 3 scriptures on the screen there. Proverbs has lots to say on this subject. 19:13, for example. It says, a foolish son is the ruin of his father, but the contentions of a wife are a continual dripping. Anybody had that dripping faucet? Man, it shut up. It won't stop. At least one more, 21 and verse 9 says, better to dwell in the corner of a housetop than in a house shared with a contentious woman. Just the nagging that takes place when the marriage isn't measuring up, but when you value other things in place of the marriage, it's headed for complications. Hey, let me offer you a second thing and draw it out of the book of Proverbs, and that is to commit to permanence. Commit to permanence. Now, it would be great if a solid marriage meant easy and happy, but it doesn't. Sometimes solid means solid and committed. It means solid and persevering. It means solid and striving. And is it worth it? Absolutely. Look at Proverbs 5 and verse 18 and 19. It says there, rejoice with the wife of your youth and always be enraptured with her love. Think of the example for your family when you're able to say, 10 years from now, I did everything I could to fight for our family. I went to the mat for our marriage. I did everything that I could. And think of the example to your kids when you commit to permanence, praying and apologizing, compromising, changing, confessing, problem solving, adjusting expectations, seeking counseling and advice. A few years ago, they came out with the movie War Room. And in the movie War Room, which was an outstanding film, one of the key points for me in that movie was where the main character, Clara, talked about instead of fighting in your family, why don't you fight for your family? Man, I just thought that was such a great phrase. So much time is spent in conflict and fighting. What if we fought for it? What you have is worth fighting for. Fight for it. That verse also in Proverbs chapter 5 talks to us about rejoicing. So we're going to say aim for joy there. Not just grin and bear it. Go for more than that. Not just mere roommates. Go for more than that. Rejoice with the wife of your youth. Now, the context of chapter 5, verse 18 is sexual passion, relational intimacy, emotional connection. That's built through common goals, common interests, common ministry, common recreation. If you don't have anything in common, then you kind of begin to work on some things and compromise and change and grow in new ways till you have something in common. Marriage is not a 50-50 proposition where I've done my 50%, I'm waiting for them to do theirs, and as soon as they do their 50%, then we're going to be really getting along well here. Marriage is a 100% commitment. Are you giving 100% commitment? Now, what we tend to do is judge ourselves by our intentions. I had good intentions. I meant well. I tried. I was going to get to that. But we judge others by their actions. Look what they did or didn't do. Look what they said or didn't say. But I meant well. I intended to. I have really good intentions. Now, opposites tend to attract. My wife and I are very opposite people. But over the course of being married, very often the very things that attracted you, because often the attraction is in that opposite thing. They have these characteristics, personality, skills, interests that, wow, that's intriguing. But over the course of time, what can happen if we're not aiming to move toward those values is we begin to resent those values. And I've had conversations with a lot of people that are resenting the very things that attracted them in the first place. I love that he always wants to help people 10 years later. He always wants to help other people. I can't believe it. Isn't that what attracted you in the first place? The joy, aim for joy. The joy comes when we begin to celebrate the differences, move toward each other, begin to adapt some of those interests as our own. We learn to value what they value, appreciate what they appreciate. You don't just marry a face. You marry a set of values. And as you move toward marriage, you look at that set of values and you say, those are the kinds of values that I want to have in my life. And then over the course of the marriage, you move toward those values so that you get 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road. Those values align, and it's hard to tell. Like, to whom was that important when we started? I don't know. We kind of have that together now. Who was that a big deal to when all this got started? Well, I don't know. We both have that now. Aim for joy. That builds to the next one, the fourth one out of the six we want to pass along. And this is one of the bigger ones to me. Keep on investing. Keep on investing. Hey, question for you. Can you name some area of your life that you can neglect for 10 years, and after 10 years, it's better? How about the paint on your house? If you neglect the paint on your house for 10 years, is it better at the end of 10 years? Now, you might say, hey, I painted that house once, and when I get ready to paint it again, I'll let that house know. Can you neglect your yard for 10 years? How about 10 days? I mowed half my yard before lunch yesterday and half my yard after lunch. And I said to myself, I hope I don't have to mow the whole yard again. It probably grew in 3 hours from the rain and the sun. If you neglect your yard for 10 days, can you Is it going to be better when you get done? I mowed that yard, and when I get ready to mow that yard again, I'll tell that yard when it's going to get mowed. Try that and see what happens. And yet, I told her I loved her the day we got married, and I'll let her know if I change my mind. The reality is the second law of thermodynamics applies to your house, it applies to your car, and it applies to your relationships. Chapter 12 of Proverbs in verse 11. Take a look what it says there. He who tills the land will be satisfied with bread, but he who follows frivolity is devoid of understanding. Isn't that fascinating? Now, so many of you understand that work the land. But imagine if we applied that to a marriage. If you cultivate it, if you invest in it, then there's bread to be satisfied with. But if you pursue frivolity, devoid of understanding, look at verse 27 in the same chapter, chapter 12. The lazy man does not roast what he took, but diligence is man's precious possession. Now we understand that when it comes to painting a house. We understand that when it comes to taking care of our vehicles. That's why a marriage-centered family is the strongest unit. It says that the couple is investing in each other and themselves. Now and then somebody will say, well, we just don't love each other anymore. What they mean by that is we stopped investing in each other some time ago, and now we're seeing the results of that. One of the hugest things for us when our kids were in elementary school is we found another family whose kids were the same age, and we exchanged date nights, and we'd watch their kids for free, and they watched our kids a couple weeks later. It was just, we're investing in each other. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be significant. It's an investment in each other. It applies to relationships. If you say, we don't love each other anymore, that means your energy and effort is being put somewhere other than that relationship. So number 5, get help fast. Get help fast. Far too often, when folks come to see me, I'm getting involved about a year too late. Man, if we could have had this conversation last year, if we could have talked about just this little bit of thing, a little bit of a communication skill, understanding the values that are different. Hey, we've hit a rough patch. Could we just talk about a couple things? The earlier, the better. Any two people who are fully committed to God can make a marriage work. It's not a matter of, well, I think we're incompatible, or I think we've married the wrong person. When a couple's marital difficulties get addressed early on, the probability of healing is very high. Chances are they're not that far apart. Little tip on communicating, little recognition of the different values that are in play, because every conflict is a values conflict. So if we can begin to recognize what are the values in play here that are in conflict. A refresher on what forgiveness looks like. So often when one individual says to the other spouse, hey, let's go have a little conversation. Maybe we can improve something. The other person says, well, that's your problem. You go get help for it. That's not my problem. Now, there's an old saying that says, if mama ain't happy, what's the rest of that? Ain't nobody happy. Now, I'll allow you to decide if that's true at your house or not. I want to just make the point of that expression is, if mama's got a problem, then we all have a problem. There's not any such thing as her problem or his problem, because have you ever had a situation where she had a problem, but now it's like affecting you as well, guys? Or you have a problem and it spills over to the rest of the family? My problems affect my mood, my temperament, my attitude, my time, my money, my focus. Can you imagine in your household if your spouse got cancer and you're like, yep, they got a problem. Hey, you should go get that problem taken care of. Go talk to somebody. Deal with that. What happens if somebody gets cancer in your house? Who has a problem? We all do. We all have a problem. We've all got to figure this out. It's not a matter of Terry has an issue. We have a problem. So get help fast. Don't wait till it's so far apart that things have been said and things have been done that hurt, that wound, that are hard to get over. I want to close with this one because this is a major topic in the book of Proverbs. A couple of scriptures, I guess, on the Proverbs 11:14 talks about getting help, getting counsel. Where no counsel is, the people fall. But in a multitude of counselors, there's safety. Proverbs 15 and verse 22, without counsel, plans go awry. But in the multitude of counselors, they are established. So Proverbs, it's like a life hack. Hey, we could go talk to somebody and get a little tip on communication. Hey, we could go talk to somebody and just try to work through this, issue with family members, whatever. And it doesn't mean that the two of you are going down the tubes, or if we go have a conversation that they're going to think everything's really terrible. No, in fact, I'd rather we have the conversations when a little tweak would help. Well, the last one, Proverbs spends a lot of time on this topic. Beware the danger of adultery. Beware the danger of adultery. Many places in the book of Proverbs and elongated sections of the book of Proverbs warn of the dangers of adultery. Look at chapter 6, verse 32, 33. Whoever commits adultery with a woman lacks understanding. He who does so, look at this phrase, destroys his own soul. Wounds and dishonor he'll get, and his reproach will not be wiped away. You're killing yourself. You're destroying yourself, not to mention the people around you. But when a person's involved in adultery, whether it's actual sex outside of marriage, sex before marriage, sex outside of their marriage, or whether it's in a pornographic situation, so often that individual's obsessed with themselves and they think, nobody has to know, I'm not hurting anybody else, it's just me, this is my decision. And Proverbs says, you're killing yourself. You're hurting yourself. Now, right away, there's somebody here saying, but I'm the exception, not me. That's good advice for some people, a lot of people. They need that advice about adultery, that you're hurting yourself. But I can handle it. I can do this. Elsewhere in Proverbs it says, can a person take fire onto their lap and not be burned? You're not the exception. I remember the day my friend said, Joe, I was going to dump some brush. And he said, hey, there's poison ivy all over that fence post. Just watch yourself. He doesn't know. I'm different. I'm special. That's just poison ivy. He gets that. And man, it was one of the worst cases I ever got, all up and down my forearms, exactly what he said. I wasn't the exception, and neither are you. When Proverbs warns us about adultery, chapter 7 has an extended section that I want to read some verses from there, starting in verse 21. Take a look at what it says. With her enticing speech, she caused him to yield. Leading up to it was, a setting where it could have been a pornographic picture. It could have been an actual person, individual, enticing a young man. And he's called the simple there, meaning he's not wise, he's not smart, he's not thinking. But with her enticing speech, she caused him to yield. And with her flattering lips, she seduced him. Immediately, he went after her. Here's such a great phrase. As an ox to the slaughter. I'm not hurting anybody. Nobody knows. It's just me. No one's affected. You're going as an ox to the slaughter, or a fool to the correction of the stocks. Next verse goes on, verse 23. Till an arrow is stuck in his liver. Is there a more serious place you could be wounded? Maybe in the heart. As a bird hastens to the snare, here's this another great phrase. He did not know it would cost his life. When we get involved in adultery, the cost is high. And what we always do, what people do in an adulterous situation, is we minimize or ignore the consequences, and we magnify artificially, we inflate the benefits. This is what I'm going to get out of it. This is what this person is like. Here's what these images are. In pornography, I don't have any commitment. I don't have any risk. I don't even have to know the person. I don't even have to impress the person. And yet I can still feel like a man by what I'm viewing. And we do not understand that it's costing our life. So the scripture goes on. It's this loud flashing neon light. Verse 24. Now therefore listen to me, my children. Pay attention to the words of my mouth. Do not let your heart turn aside to her ways. Do not stray into her paths. Proverbs is shouting out, don't get involved in adultery. Don't get involved in adultery. You're killing yourself. It's an ox to the slaughter. You're killing yourself. And living as close to the meat locker as we do, we see the cows destined for the slaughterhouse. Just standing there, have no idea what's 10 feet away from them. And the person involved in adultery doesn't understand that either. Do not let your heart, do not stray into her paths. 2 more verses from this extended text and we'll stop there. Verse 26 and 27. She has cast down many wounded, and all who were slain by her were strong men. Her house is the way to the grave, descending to the chambers of death. Extreme caution, danger, watch out below. There's a bridge out. People are driving off the edge of this cliff. Don't go this route. No matter how painful your marriage is or unsatisfying it could be, it does not come close to the pain of adultery. Adultery is not the answer. Adultery doesn't reduce the pain. It doesn't solve your problems. It multiplies your pains and compounds your problems. Now, the Bible has a way out of that. If you find yourself in that situation, the Bible has a way out of adultery. It's called repentance, confession, forgiveness from God and to each other, and then restoration through trust, which takes place over an extended period of time. And the Bible offers a better path than adultery. Learn to walk more deeply with God and lean into God. If the marriage is unsatisfying and He's all you've got to hang on to Him. You get more involved in serving in your church. You find a new hobby or interest until your spouse is ready to work together. Beware the danger, and all through the book of Proverbs. And so if you want to cultivate and invest in your marriage, I recommend in the book of Proverbs, get your notebook out. Right at the top, Proverbs on marriage. And then today is the 23rd day of the month. Start in chapter 23, and each day of the month, read that chapter from the book of Proverbs, and you're just going to make notes on your page. Every time I come to a verse that deals with a marriage issue, or maybe that particular issue that you're dealing with in marriage. The warnings against adultery. Next week, we're going to talk about words in our mouth and the things that we say, the power of the tongue. And so maybe that's an issue that you're saying your sarcasm is biting and hurtful in your family. So write those things down. Begin to write it down so that you have a list. And at the end of a month of reading in the book of Proverbs, you would have a list. Here's what Proverbs says about marriage. That's a great life hack. You don't have to rub toothpaste on your headlights. You just read in Proverbs and it says, here's what to watch out for, and here's how to cultivate in your fields, and here's how to invest in your marriage and aim for joy. Place high value on this marriage. I'm valuing it too low. That fourth one is a big deal to me. Keep on investing. No other area of life can we neglect it and it improves. Let's apply what we know is true about a yard and a car and a house. Let's apply that even more to the most important thing, because the car we're going to get rid of. The yard's just a yard. But a marriage, he who finds a wife finds a good thing. A prudent wife is from the Lord. Would you stand with me, please, with heads bowed? God in heaven, I pray for strong marriages. I pray that every one of us would value marriage. Help people here that have to work through a child-centered family that has been developing and to come to a marriage-centered family. I pray for folks that are in adulterous situations, that they take steps toward confession, repentance, making things right with you. Finding accountability, having conversations, giving the perseverance that's needed to build trust. May every one of us invest in that which you said is a good thing. In Jesus' name, amen.